Awesome. So, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you have been enjoying these past few days of DappCon. So, I'm going to be talking here about how Nosospace is enabling what we have been calling next-gen banking. But in order to understand how we're enabling that, let's first understand why we're talking about next-gen banking and what does that actually mean, right? So, I think this just went too fast. So what are the problems we're trying to address here? So technology has become global, and we all have been using on our day-to-day lives things like Spotify for listening to music, Netflix for entertainment overall, Uber for transportation, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, for social media. And there are all global brands, global experiences. So if I move from Brazil to Germany, to Portugal, to Switzerland, to the UK, I pretty much enjoy the exact same experience dealing with all of those companies, right? But why that's not the case for my bank? Why, if I move from Brazil to Germany, I have to move from Nubank in Brazil to Deutsche Bank in Germany or to Revolut in the UK? Why can't I have just a seamless sort of global banking experience? So in order to understand that, I think it's good to understand what banking is about. And banking, here I'm talking banking as a verb, not bank as necessarily an institution, and it's one of the oldest activities that is in the world. So there are six, actually we can define that 6 basic layers for banking. So first of all, how you store value, then how you manage your identity and compliance, right? So we don't want other people getting access to your funds. Then how you process payments and transfers, how you receive income, potentially how you pay taxes, how you get access to credit and borrow, and how you save and build wealth for the future, right? So those are the sort of the 6 basic layers for banking. That activity has been evolving over the past 4,000 years, right? So we got all the way back to the sort of very, very old ancient origins, all the way through modern banking and contemporary banking. So where we are right now is in an age where banks have leveraged a lot of technology first to be more efficient, to be more profitable, right? So we all got access to our first mobile internet bankings. Then we moved to the neobank era where you get this very nice UI and user experience, but it's built on top of very old legacy infrastructure, right? And what does that mean at the end of the day is that this is something that prevents us from going towards this global banking experience. Because we cannot process a transfer from the UK to Brazil and vice versa if we're depending on SWIFT, which only works 9 to 7, Mondays through Fridays, and it's a super cumbersome network to operate on, super costly, and managed by the very traditional banks. And lastly, you still have regulations that differ on a country-by-country basis. Local payment rails also differ on a country-by-country basis. User behaviors, there's still some very local, unique user behaviors, and how you manage to accomplish a single banking experience through all of that. And in our view, that's what Nosospace is enabling, is building this future, next-gen banking, and creating this global banking experience with a global account. And how does that work? So if you unpeel all of those 6 different layers of banking, and you break that down in how you store value nowadays, we can have a one-chain smart account where you store all of your digital assets in there. They're going to be using to spend on a daily basis. We have a compliance toolbox that allows you to screen those assets for money laundering, for compliance checks, all the sort of things that you have to do in order to connect to the traditional financial rails all over the world. Then you have payments. And in payments, you have a global payment method, which right now primarily we depend on Visa and MasterCard to be accepted worldwide. So Visa and MasterCard allows you to get accepted on over, I'd say like close to 200 million merchants right now all over the world. And you have the local payment integrations, right? So you have, for instance, like Pix in Brazil, SEPA and IBANs in Europe, Fedwires in the US, and you can keep going on that. Then we have the potential to integrate with partners in the Gnosis financial ecosystem, like Monerium, BRLA, and NOAA, to integrate on those local rails with Visa to connect on the global rail. And on top of that, given the Gnosis Pay is built on a permissionless API, you can leverage all the DeFi protocols to do all the savings, wealth building, borrowing, credit, all the other like different functions that you can do on banking. But at the end of the day, like, why does it matter, right? And I think for those of you who were here last year, when Gnosis Pay was announced and launched, so some significant things have changed, and we've accomplished quite some interesting things. First of all, we processed 1 million payments, meaning 1 million transactions of crypto payments being processed to merchants all over the world in a very seamless way. Actually, in over 115,000 merchants. In 10,000 cities. In over 130 countries in all 5 continents. So that's the scale of distribution that you can get in a year. Instead of like having to build all of these yourself, bridging like the TradFi rails with the blockchain crypto rails in leveraging compliance regulations and connecting that to what we use as our day-to-day in crypto allows you to do that. And that's all with like one single on-chain self-custodial smart account. But Gnosis Pay, we're not here to do this to become a neobank ourselves. So it's not our strategy to kind of like create and control the ultimate user experience. So we're about providing the infrastructure to power then like thousands, dozens of thousands of like neobanks and others who want to offer that capacity to their client base. Crypto native or otherwise, right? So I think we're like embedding the crypto superpowers and blockchain capacity on a very simple way for everyone to use. So Gnosis Pay is built for the open internet. What does that mean is that our API is permissionless whenever it's possible to be permissionless. So right now we have 3 partners that are directly integrated with Gnosis Pay. So Zio, Picnic, you're going to hear from one of our friends here quite soon. Metri, right, the Gnosis gateway to Circles also. So all of those partners are integrated through the Gnosis Pay API, and they can very simply, in a very straightforward, simple fashion, issue a card to their client base and process payments like all over the globe. So in most cases, like a quick demo is worth more than a lot of words also, right? So hopefully this works. But the idea is to also showcase like how simply you can integrate with Gnosis Pay. So our idea is to build Gnosis Pay with a developer's first approach. So I haven't been coding for a while, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me for like a little bit and hope this still does work. But basically, like I have my, let me see how I can switch to my screen here. So I think this works. So I have my Ethereum wallet here on my browser. And I have Postman. So for those of you who are not as technical, that's a super nice interface for you to test APIs. So basically, I can start by getting a very simple API call to get announced from NosePay. And I can use my wallet to sign a transaction, authorizing NosePay API to get access to my information here. I verified this signature. I get a token. Now that all my further API calls can basically leverage this token for everything that I'm going to be doing here. So first thing that I can do is get my user profile. It did work. So I get all the information from my test account here. So someone seems to be eating a lot of feijoadas here. I don't know why. But so I have all my information here. And if I want to create a virtual card order, meaning I want to create a virtual card to buy circles, my card is created. I just created a virtual card connected to my Web3 wallet. And it's been a while since I haven't been coding for real. And I can manage every single thing from here. So if I go back potentially to my NosePay account, I have one more card created here on my list of cards that I did a lot of tests before doing this, right? So it's as simple as that. So hopefully we're not going to hear anything too different from João, like we can talk about picnic. So not too complex, right? Because it's not supposed to be. And that's going to be the exact same experience if you are in Brazil, in the UK, in Germany, anywhere else. So we enable this, what we're calling like a law non-compliance. So if you want to on-ramp your funds in Brazil using a PIX transfer to your NosePay account, you're going to be doing KYC only once. You on-ramp funds in Brazilian reais using PIX. You get Brazilian reais on your account. You swap Brazilian reais for USDC on-chain through CalSwap. You get your USDC on-chain. You issue your NosePay card, virtual. You add it to your Apple wallet or like to your Google Pay wallet. You pay for something out of that account, or if you want to do like a transfer out as well, money out, money in, you can do all of that with one single integration. So now it's some time for questions. That's all. Hope we could give an overview of like what this is all about. Happy to take questions here.
Thank you so much, Rafa. Let's open it for questions then. Yeah, first one.
Thank you for the demonstration. Can you elaborate a little bit about how and into what extent it is decentralized, this API endpoint, I would say, or the underlying infrastructure, so we can rely on that, you know?
Right, so that's a great question, and I get it all the time, primarily because if you're talking about decentralization, then you're talking about cards and TradFi, it isn't love at first sight, right? They're not meant for each other, and they didn't bump out of serendipity on some weird place and they fall in love automatically, right? They have very different concepts. They come from very different backgrounds. So how we reconcile TradFi with DeFi in all of that? And it's like any type of relationship, right? Like something's got to give. And where you define the boundaries is what's extremely important, right? So Gnosis Pay relies on this decentralized, fully decentralized account. So you have right now a smart contract that holds all of your assets in there. On Gnosis chain, fully decentralized, right? What we developed as a core technology is the ability to process TradFi payments from that smart contract. And what does that mean, right? A card is a type of payment that's super interesting because you can do a lot of things with a card. You can put a transaction. Everyone here uses Uber, right? We all do use Uber, right? So when you order an Uber, you are authorizing Uber to charge you on your card, let's say like $7, €7 to go from point A to point B, right? You do that authorization. At the end of the ride, you give 5 stars to your driver, and you give him a 5% tip, a 10% tip. How does that work from a payment perspective? Right? Or if you're not happy with the driver, you want to cancel that ride, how does that happen? And this is not something that's super intuitive to build on blockchain, right? Because once you sign a transaction for $5, okay, I want to give like a €1 extra for tip, like how can I make that happen, right? I have to sign another transaction and so on and so forth. So there's some reconciliation on how TradFi and blockchain work. That's what's encapsulated in our API, right? So you always have control over your funds. You can go on chain and revoke all the assets and do all the type of things that a very experienced Web3 developer can do. But to some extent, there needs to be a bridge to those TradFi payments. And what we have built is the capacity to do that. So you can simply say look, I don't want to get access to your card anymore. Just shut this down. Totally fine, you're just not going to be able to process card payments. Or if we enable it again, you can process card payments. But your assets are always on a decentralized way. To some extent, once they leave your wallet to be cleared and settled with Visa or any other payment processor, we're going to have to take those funds, and we do this in a way that we don't take custody of the funds ourselves either. So if you take a look at how funds leave your wallet all the way to the merchant, all the way up to Visa, we don't touch the funds. And then Visa, right now, currently pays most merchants via TradFi. So they will off-ramp those funds and settle with the merchants through TradFi.
Thank you so much, Rafa. We unfortunately don't have time for more questions, but if you have questions, find Rafa around the venue, ask the questions. Thank you so much, Rafa.
Thank you. Thank you.